Okay, so we're about to start setting up the Belco Formula 2000 dialysis machine. So we're going to gather our supplies, 20 cc syringe for heparin, 2 bags of normal saline, tubing, your acid jug that you need. Make sure you double check with the patient's chart. Bicarbonate cartridge. If you're going to the wall, then you don't need the cartridge. And if you're going to the central acid concentrate, then you don't need the jug. Okay. You also need your chlorine strips. You're going to be checking to make sure that there's no leach. And a syringe. Okay. All right. So here's our dialysis machine. We're going to turn on. We're going to wash our hands and turn on the machine. The hard power switch is located in the back. Okay, the light turns yellow and then you press the on-off button. The light turns green and it begins to boot up. Okay, so as it's booting up, it's going to start doing the self-test, and it's going to start rinsing as well. It's going to start a high-power rinse. During this time, you can, start hanging your saline bags and putting on your tubing.
Saline bag.
Yeah, saline bags are on. Always double check that you have 9% normal saline. Do not assume. Okay, yeah. All right. Next step, you're going to put your tubing on. So open it. Try to open it over a table. Because you don't want the tubing to come apart on you and then you end up contaminating it, right? Take out the arterial side first and tighten the arterial spike and the saline spike. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, tighten those both up. And you also want to clamp both of those, right? Because you don't want them to leak. So clamp, clamp. Excellent. Now you're going to bring your arterial tubing over, and I always say make it into a bit of a purse and just hang it right onto your arm, right? Yeah, okay. And then you want to spike the 2 bags, one with the saline, and one for the arterial spike. So 2 bags spiked there, and remember they're all nicely clamped so nothing should leak. Great, so now there's 2 chambers. You're gonna put the arterial chamber here, right? Pre-filter, it just sits right there. That's the first chamber the blood hits when it comes out of the patient, okay, from the vascular access. Okay, so make sure you have it in there nice and tight and pull down. Yep. Okay, excellent. Okay, then you want to get that out of your hand. So you want to put that in there, get it out of the way. That's your post-arterial chamber. And then now you want to feed the thick part of the tubing, which is the pump segment. Okay, so the pump segment gets fed right into here. Make sure the red part is right at the arrow. Squeeze and push in. Make sure your brakes are on as well, because that helps to give you a little bit more. You want to put your brakes on there. Excellent. Gives you a little bit more firm pressure there. Then you use the up arrow, which is called the semi-automatic load. Okay, you can also use the handle. The handle's available as well. Okay, but using the semi-automatic load, up arrow saves your fingers. Great. Okay, so you want to close that up. Okay, and then you want to put this, the arterial tubing, feed it into the arterial slot. Excellent. Okay, notice that the machine is still running in the auto test, so it's checking for any leaks and it's telling you to wait, but you can still put the rest of your tubing on. Okay, so you want to put your dialyzer in at this point. Okay, so double check with the Cardex FX120. Write down the lot numbers, not only of your tubing, but your dialyzer. Both of those get charted for tracking, and then you want to straighten out the arm and attach the dialyzer in there. So just give it a nice push, pull the blue handle over. Okay, now you want to attach the part of the tubing that goes to the dialyzer. So you're going to attach the arterial tubing to the bottom of the dialyzer on the arterial port. Wrong side, so it's this side here. Make sure you ladies have the right side. Yep. Okay, keep your caps on the top of the machine. Screw it in nice and tight. Okay, now it's the venous tubing next. Okay, leave your transducer out for now. Okay, the only part you missed there is putting the blood volume in. If you want to snap that in before you put the venous tubing in, that goes arrow up, and you can see the light shining through there. If you have a close look, make sure it's arrow up and snapped right in there. Okay, you can see the light shining through. That's what takes a percentage of hemoglobin concentration and converts that to blood volume when the patient is on. Okay, so tighten up your bag there, right at the connection, right here. Okay, because you don't want that to drop on the floor. It's going to get contaminated. Nice and tight, and you want to hang your bag on one of the hooks beside the saline. Excellent. Okay, that's upside down, so you want to make sure it's always right side up. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, so we want to put the venous chamber into the venous holder. So the best way to do that is just to push it in, right? And then we won't feed it into the air detect and the venous line clamp as yet until we prime. Now we've got an alarm on our screen that we need to deal with, but I'll let you connect the dialyzer first. The venous end goes to the venous port of the dialyzer. Okay. Nice and tight. Excellent. Okay, so let's deal with that alarm. That alarm is on the blood side. Okay, and it's saying concentrate connectors. So let's look at our 3 concentrate connectors and let's tighten those up. So the venous feels fine. The arterial feels fine. Maybe it's this one. Oh, it's the bicarb. It's not these 3, it's the bicarb that wasn't closed. So if you can just close that up. This is not part of the priming procedure, but again, any alarms on the screen do have to be checked. Okay, so typically that's already closed. Okay, next step. Okay, so we put the arterial tubing on, we put the venous tubing on. We have to do our safety checks. So our safety checks to make sure we have the right patient. Okay, make sure we have the right chart, the right dialyzer, the right acid. Okay, we're going to check the screen. We're going to check that the machine is disinfected. So the X should not be here if it's disinfected. We're going to make sure the battery is charged. And we're going to check the chlorine. So go ahead and check the chlorine. So you grab a syringe. There's a 3cc right there on the counter. Excellent. And you're going to attach that to any of the dialysate hoses, either the arterial or the venous hose. Yeah. And you're going to pull back a little bit. Excellent. And then you're going to grab your chlorine testing strips. Get that on the video what those look like. They're purple and they say residual chlorine on them. Okay, take a strip out and then apply that drop to the strip. Okay. These strips should not be exposed to air or be kept in your pockets. Check to make sure it's not purple. So you want to get that in the video just to check that against the bottom. You check that there, make sure that it's clear. Clear meaning that there's no chlorine residue in the machine, because that can cause hemolysis on our patients. Okay, so machine disinfected, battery charged. If the battery is not charged, it turns out to be red, then you have to reboot in the back. If the machine was not disinfected, then you clearly need to let it run a little bit longer and recheck in 5 minutes. Okay. So we've already hung our arterial and venous tubing. We're going to move on to the next step, which is waiting for the select dialysis or the system to be ready. So the system's not ready yet. It says to select dialysis, wait for test end. Okay, so she's going to also put the arterial tubing into the arterial slot. And then attach your transducers as the very final step of the tubing. Okay, so arterial transducer, take off the cap first and then push it straight in. Nice, and then anti-clockwise turn there until it's tight. Same with the venous transducer. Take the cap off, push it in, and anti-clockwise turn. Great, so that is a full tubing set. The other thing you want to do is drape your venous line over the top so that right here, starting from here, right over the top like this so that it doesn't get all tangled, okay? Alrighty. So at this point, we're waiting for the system to be ready. It takes about 10 minutes to go to system ready. Yeah, so continue. Once your system's ready, it'll say system ready at the bottom. It'll be a peach box that you can override because it'll continue to alarm if it stays in system ready if you don't do the next step, okay? So at this point, you want to select dialysis. We're gonna hit OK because double needle and bi-dry are already highlighted. So that says for the concentrate and for the bicarb. So we're gonna hit OK. Excellent. So at this point, you're gonna attach your concentrates, your acid and your bicarb. Okay. So make sure you check you have the correct acid. You can either use a red wand or a blue wand. That's okay. Either the red wand or the blue wand is okay. All right, so you're gonna attach, yeah, go ahead, attach to that. Perfect. And then you're also gonna attach your bicarbonate cartridge. So it's a dry powder. This one's a little bit wet because we used it on the last demonstration, but it'll be a dry powder. You're gonna pull the lever over. Always check your bicarb to make sure that the expiry date, you want to show her the expiry on the video, is okay and that there's no cracks or leaks. These little black knobs won't be on a new bicarb. They'll be coming out of the package and they're one-time use only, just like our dialyzers. Okay, so you want to move that over, take that off, lift up the lever, and then you want to attach. And it won't be leaking in a true new bicarb, okay? It won't be leaking at all. Then you attach the knuckle ring, which is the silver cap on the top. Try not to get all tangled. Push it in and nice and tight. Push it in. Yep. No tangles. That's beautiful. Okay. Right. So at this point, you want to mix the acid and the bicarb and the reverse osmosis water to form the dialysate. So on your screen, you can see dialysate preparation. So you press that button, and it takes 3 full minutes to fully prep the dialysate side of the circuit. So when the conductivity becomes 14.0 millisiemens per centimeter and the bicarb becomes 3.0 millisiemens per centimeter, you will get bypass on your screen, and that tells you that it's fully mixed. In the meantime, while the machine's doing that, you can begin priming. So start by priming the saline line, because that's the line you're going to use to return the blood on your patients later on. So open it by gravity, give your little chamber a squeeze, just like you would with any other saline bag, and then start your pump to prime that side. Start your pump. It's already set at 180, so you can turn the pump on. See the pump on button? So it's already set at 180. Now you're going to turn it on. And what it's doing now is filling the saline line. Okay. Once your saline line is filled, you're going to clamp this, open up your arterial line and clamp your saline line because it's all full. Right? Good. Everybody caught that? I didn't even have to touch the pump at all. All I did was simply open up that so it's pulling this instead of pulling that. Instead of pulling the saline. Okay, so right now we are priming. It's going through the arterial side of the circuit. It's going to hit the arterial chamber, and that's the first chamber you should fill. Okay, so you fill that. You're going to be filling the chambers 1, 2, 3, pre-pump, arterial, post-pump, arterial, and venous. Okay, so fill your number 1 first by venting. number 1 arterial chamber by venting up here. Yeah, open to vent, open to vent. Yeah, see, I told you you're the expert. Yeah, okay, and close. Yeah. So you fill that about half full because you know that air will push it down. And then you want to do number 2, chamber number 2, post-arterial. Not by venting, that's incorrect. You want to recap that. You want to manually invert this one. Okay, so it did manage to fill by your opening it, but this the proper way is to manually invert and then clamp. Always get in the habit of clamping. I'm just going to move your venous line out of the way because you are a little bit tangled here. Great. Okay. So always try to avoid tangles, like these types of tangles you want to avoid. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to untangle you a little here. Perfect. So try when you set up your tubing earlier, try not to get tangled. Okay. All right. So that's all done. We're waiting for 800 cc's to go through the blood compartment. And once the saline hits the bag, then you're going to fill your venous chamber. You want to fill your venous chamber because it looks like the saline's already hitting the bag. So go ahead and vent your venous chamber. Yeah. Right. Okay, so you can fill it a little bit higher. That's okay because you know that air is going to push it down more. Okay, yeah. Right? Good. So once you fill that, you'll notice that the venous chamber, venous clamp opens, so you can arm into your air detect and you can put your venous line into your venous line clamp and make sure you get it all the way in. Just like you're flossing your teeth, all the way in, nice and tight, and pull it towards you, right? It's very important that that line is fitted very well because that's a safety mechanism to prevent air from going back to your patient. At this point, we're waiting for 800 cc's to go through the main priming bag. So on the screen, if you zoom in here, it says 24.5. It starts at 25 liters on the end priming. Once 800 cc's goes in, it goes down to 24.2 liters. So we're waiting for the prime to happen. In the meanwhile, you're just watching to make sure nothing's leaking or anything, and you would mute any alarms and deal with those in the meanwhile. Okay. Looks like bypasses come up, but we're not quite ready to prime the dialysate side. Notice it says 3.1 and 14.1. The 0.1 is negligible, but a minimum of 14 and 3.1 is acceptable. 14.0 and 3.0 is also acceptable. So that there's a 0.1 give or take differential there. Okay. All right. So our 800's almost gone through. When the end priming hits 24.2, then 800 has gone through. Then there'll be an automatic stop at this point. Once it goes to 24.2, there's an automatic stop. So you're going to restart the pump to let the other 200 through. Because if you were to stop, continue at this point, right? Yeah, go ahead. If you were to continue at this point and not stop the pump, then you'd have to throw away that 200 in the garbage, and it's quite heavy. So you may as well, if you had the time, just let the other 200 run through, but you do have to stay focused on that bag to ensure that bag doesn't dry out. Otherwise, you're going to get some extra air in your circuit, okay? So make sure you are in the area when you're doing this, okay? Don't go walking off when you're letting that extra 200 through, okay? Notice the QB rate there is 180. You can go anywhere from 150 to 250 for the initial prime. Anything faster than 250, you will be introducing more air into the system. Okay, so try not to prime too fast. We're also keeping an eye on the bag. As soon as that bag goes almost dry, then you want to stop the pump. Okay, so get your finger ready there. And we're not going to be clamping, but we're going to be stopping the pump right here. As soon as that bag gets to the bottom. that's good. So stop there. So you want to take your bag down, clamp the arterial line, clamp that line right there, turn it upside down, and then we're going into the next phase of priming, which is called the recirculation phase. So you're going to disconnect your arterial line and attach it to the Y on the bag, on the drain bag. So you'll see that there's two connections. There's a venous and there's an arterial connection. You're going to attach it to the arterial connection. Yeah. Maybe just bring that forward so it's not as awkward. Perfect. Yeah. So attach that. Make sure it's lure locked well. So this is the recirculation phase. During the recirculation phase, the bag needs to be clamped. So you want to clamp the bag. And all the other clamps need to be open. Okay? So these two, yeah, and your saline line, because it is pulling 0.10 saline into the circuit during the recirculation phase. Okay? All right, so at this point you're going to restart your pump, and the machine is basically circling out any air in the system while you wait for your patient. Okay? To avoid tangles, always good to drape overhand. Okay. Okay. All right. So during the recirculation phase, it gives you an opportunity to prime the dialysate side. So you want to flip your dialyzer red end up. Flip your dialyzer red end up. Okay. And before you do that, it doesn't hurt to tap your dialyzer because you notice there's still some air on the blood side, right? So let's just flip it back and tap out any air and then flip. Okay, so red end up. Attach your hoses because you are in bypass. Once you're in bypass, you're allowed to attach your hoses. You can never ever put your hoses on before the bypass is on. Okay, so you're going to attach the arterial hose to the arterial port first on the dialyzer. So arterial hose to arterial port. So red to red. Okay. Take the cap off. It may leak a bit. Actually, it shouldn't leak if it's a brand new dialyzer. We've reused these ones. Make sure you push this part nice and tight and it's on there securely. Okay, next you're going to attach your venous. Okay, and it won't leak in the real world because it'll be a dry dialyzer, brand new. Okay, to prevent the leaking here in the demo world, we can just turn it sideways. Yeah. Good. Excellent. So now to get the dialyzer to fill, you're going to take the machine out of bypass, which is this button here. You're going to press it. Right now the bypass is on. Right now the bypass is being taken off, which no light means that it's turned off. So it's releasing the flow of dialysate, which is a mixture of acid bicarbonate water, into the dialyzer that is flowing around the hollow fibers and coming out through the red arterial hose. So we're getting inflow of fresh dialysate and outflow into the effluent line and down the drain. Okay. Oop, your bag went dry. Something went dry here.
Oh, that one is clamped.
That one's supposed to be clamped, but we're in recirc. We're in recirc. Okay, let me just stop for a minute to see where your air is. So apparently that air was just because we didn't tap it that well when we were venous end up, and that air was just sitting somewhere along the dialyzer pathway in the fibers. So that air has now come out nicely, and we're continuing on. We have attached our hoses and we've hit bypass, which releases the flow of dialysate into the dialyzer. Okay, it looks here to me that because that air came in, that it dropped your arterial chamber. So if you want to just fill that a little bit more, okay, because before you put a patient on, you always want to make sure your arterial chamber is half full, the post-arterial is half full, and the venous chamber should be right at martini glass level, which is right about here. Okay. Great. After you've primed both the blood and the dialysate side, you should focus in on here where it says UF rate. It goes to 1.00 kilos per hour, and you should leave it there for at least 5 minutes, and that opens up the fibers. That's the final stage that you sometimes don't see because the dialysis assistants will see this stage. Okay, and the button that turns that off is the dialyzer rinse on off button. And that just helps to open up the fibers. So when you come out of report here in center, It'll be like this. And before you start your patient, you should always put the 1 liter on for at least 5 minutes. Okay? To program this machine, I'll just go through that because you can do that as well while you're waiting for the machine to purge the air out. You go to CMOD, Dialysate, Other, and then you go into treatment time, which is right on the top. It brings you into this menu. Anytime you see return on the screen, that means that you can go back to the main screen. So if return or OK is on the screen, that brings you back to the main screen. Start with your treatment time. Highlight the time. It highlights the corresponding box. And then you can actually change the time. So if the patient was 3 hours, this is a vertical box. You're going to use the vertical arrows, and you're able to go down to 3 hours. So you can press and hold until it hits 3 hours. Your next parameter is weight loss. Do not go into UF rate because that will change the time. So for example, if I highlight that and I hit and I increase the UF rate, that changes the time. So you don't want to go in there. Your next button to go to is weight loss. Okay, so weight loss is a vertical box. I'm going to say that my patient has 1 kilo to be lost. So up arrow and go to 1 kilo. Okay, so the up arrows are used for the vertical boxes, and the across arrows are used for any horizontal box. Okay, so I am going down to 1 liter, and then I'm going to hit OK. Actually, not OK yet. I want to go through everything on my screen before I hit OK. Next is the bicarb conductivity. Okay, so for bicarb conductivity, we want 3.1 is equal to 35 millimoles of bicarb, and 3.5 is equal to 40. So I'm going to pretend that this patient is a 3.5 bicarb, and I'm going to arrow over to 3.5. That's an across bar, so across arrows. Okay, and then the last thing to set on this screen is your sodium. So I'm going to pretend that this patient is 138 sodium, which is 13.8 total conductivity. Oop, just return there. Total conductivity is what I highlight for sodium, and then just decrease that to 13.8. That's equal to a 138 sodium. Other parameters, that's where we would set our temperature for cooling our patient. So say this patient had problems with blood pressure, I would just go into temperature, and I could actually decrease to 35 right here, and then flow, and we could decrease that. Let's bring that right down to the nocturnal flow. So it's an across arrow for Bickle center would be 300, or here in center would be 300 for our night shift patients. It's 800 for intermittent hemo, which is our day and evening patients. Okay, so that's all set. So everything's all programmed, so now you can hit OK, and that confirms everything. So now you can clearly see that your UF is set at a liter. The time is already in. You can't really see it on this screen. And these numbers will adjust accordingly based on the bicarb levels and the acid level, the bicarb level that you set. And the other thing that you have to program is the heparin. So you would go CMOD heparin, okay? And then in order to program the heparin, you would start with, your pre-stop time. So for a fistula, the stop time is 60 usually. So check your Cardex and put in 60 if it's a fistula, and that's what's ordered. So that means 60 minutes before the end, the heparin will shut off so that the patient doesn't go, the needle sites don't take too long to clot off. Okay, so that helps with hemostasis. Okay, and then you would program your heparin rate. So let's say this patient's on tight infusion, 0.5 an hour. So that's a 500 continuous, and then bolus of 0.5 right at the beginning. So this bolus will be delivered right when the patient's connected. It would be delivered, and then the machine will jump right into the 0.5 an hour because the half-life of heparin is around 60 minutes. And then the heparin will stop 3 hours into the treatment because you've set the pre-stop at 60. If I set the pre-stop at 0, the heparin will be delivered right to the end of the treatment. So that's what you would do for a central line. For fistula or graft, you're setting in a pre-stop anywhere between 60 and 120 minutes, depending on what's ordered for that patient, depending on their bleeding times at the end of dialysis. And then you just hit OK. So essentially now you have set all of your parameters under CMOD, Dialysate, and you've set your heparin. So the machine is now fully programmed. The other thing that you can do, which you'll learn a little bit more tomorrow when you set up the machines again, we will go to set the profiles. Okay, so CMOD, profiles, and we're going to go into standard. Okay, so there's two types of profiles. There's the UF profile and the conductivity profile, which you learned about on day 2 of your hemodialysis orientation. So you turn them both on first of all. So for UF, okay, you want a down arrow to stepped UF, and for conductivity you want a down arrow to a linear conductivity, right? So you're starting at a high level, you're ending at a low level for sodium. So you hit OK, and then it brings you to the UF profile screen. Okay, so on the UF profile screen you can see different things. So you can see the time, the steps, and you can see the weight loss. So we're going to put the treatment time in as 4.5 hours. Okay. So this patient is a 4.5 hour patient, and he's got a lot to come off, more than 4 kilos. That's usually when we ramp, is when they have a lot to come off, plus it's ordered. So looking at these, they should add up to 100% of the weight, 100% of the 4.3. So you highlight the weight to come off. So let's say this patient gained 4.2. So I'm going to highlight that. Bring it to 4.2. So this is a really heavy patient, and the blood pressure is not holding, high intradialytic weight gain. These are the types. They've got a lot of fluid in the third space, and they're not shifting the fluid well into the intravascular space. They need help by sodium ramping. So I'm going to say this patient gained 4.2 over the 4.5 hours, and we're going to take off 40% in the first hour. These all add up to 100, right? And these boxes are all 15 minutes. So it's 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours and a half. Okay, so starting at your first step, you're going to put 40%. Okay, 40% of the 4.2 kilos is 1.46 per hour. So the blood pressure is good, sodium levels higher, you're taking more at the beginning. Then second step, we want 30% of the 4.3, just like we learned yesterday in class, right? Because now the blood pressure is coming down, so we're taking a little bit less. Third step is 20%, right? And the fourth step is 10%. So it all adds up to 100%. Okay, so you can see 1.43 an hour for the first little bit there, then 1.07. Each box is 15 minutes, right? And then 0.71 for the next hour. And then the last hour, by the time they have no blood pressure, they're 0.36 kilos an hour. Okay, so this should all add up to 100. Then we just hit OK. It gives you the graph, just like we saw the graph yesterday in the theory class. We're going to hit OK. And now we're going to our sodium profile. So we want to start them at a higher sodium. So you put your sodium, let's say the order is 145 to 135. Okay, so you highlight, and then you go over to 145 on your starting. So the first 15 minutes, they're going to be at 145 sodium. Okay, while their blood pressure is good to help shift the fluid from the third space. And then you highlight starting. Oh, you highlight, sorry, average, TC. And what you're doing at this point is you're shifting the average either up or down to bring your endpoint to your endpoint of your sodium ramp. So if you want this patient to have more highly concentrated sodium at the end, so we want 13.5, then we have to shift up to a higher sodium level until it hits 135 at the end. So essentially this is your start and this is your end point. Okay, so this start goes with this number, first 15 minutes. The average correlates to the last 15 minutes. So this patient is now ramped 145 to 135, and you can see the increments as the sodium level comes down, as blood pressure begins to come down, as sodium comes down. It's a mirror image of both. Okay, so you hit OK here, and then you OK all the way out, and that saves all the settings. This also allows you to change anything that you want to change. So if you want to change the bicarb level, say there was an order change to 3.1 or 35 bicarb, it allows you to do that. And it allows you to change the temperature. So this patient's feeling cold. I'm going to go up to 36 on the temperature. And my dialysate flow, I'm switching them over to IHD. It's now an IHD patient, not a nocturnal patient, and I'm just going to hit OK. So now green means that the profiles are in. So the UF profile's on and the conductivity profile's on. A scenario could be that the patient's not tolerating one or both. So you go CMOD profiles and you hit standard. Okay. So it allows you to cancel either profile if the patient's not tolerating, or it allows you to also adjust. So you can modify or cancel. So say we need to just take off less weight because 4.5 is just killing this patient. It's too much. Their blood pressure is dropping. You're in and out of minimum. So you hit modify profile, and then you pick and you change what you need to change. So maybe they want to cut 15 minutes for the wheel trans, and maybe they want to take off less fluid as well because now they have less time. So you go into your UF profile, you hit OK, and it allows you to modify. So typical for a dialysis patient to cut their time. So you have to cut their time here, 15 minutes. Make sure you chart that. And then for the weight loss, they're not handling the 4.2. They're crashing, feeling unwell, diaphoretic. I'm going to decrease that as well. And I'm going to go for something more reasonable for the 4 hours and 15 minutes. Let's try for 3.8. See if the blood pressure does better. Hit OK. Okay, notice the 40, 30, 20, 10 remains the same, and then you just hit OK. And you hit OK all the way out. Always hit OK all the way out. I'm not changing anything on sodium. OK all the way out helps to save and confirm everything. My bicarb's the same. It's asking if I want to change that. And there, so green means the profiles are still on, but I've modified them. When they're in profiles, you cannot go into CMOD Dialysate to change the parameters like we did in the initial demo because they're under the profile. When they're under the profile, you can't change anything under the CMOD Dialysate screen. I'm returning back to the main screen at this point. I've decided that a profile is not working for this patient. They're just feeling very unwell. So I would like to turn off both. Okay, so I'm going to go to CMOD profiles, go into standard, and I'm going to go into cancel profile. Okay, so I can cancel one or both. So it allows me to cancel just one, either just the UF and just the TC, or both. So let's go to cancel both and then hit yes, and then watch what happens. As you OK all the way out, very important, the green disappears. So if there's no green on the screen, there's no profile. Okay? All right. So the other thing is you may want to turn your heparin off during treatment because the patient starts bleeding around the needle sites. You just hit, you go to CMOD, and then you go to heparin. Actually, I can't demo that in this mode, so we'll show it in the next video when the patient's connected. Thank you.